For millions of Australians tonight, life before lockdown seems a distant memory. Melbourne's under curfew and lockdown for another 2 weeks, and the ACT and Northern Territory are in lockdown too. There's no telling when restrictions might lift in New South Wales, where its lockdown is limiting deaths and cases, but not stopping growth in the numbers, and certainly not moving towards zero. Australia's averaging more than 230,000 vaccinations a day. Almost half of eligible Australians have had at least one dose, more than 27% are fully vaccinated. In New South Wales, vaccination rates are soaring. In the last 24 hours alone, more than 110,000 people in New South Wales had an injection. 54% of eligible residents have had at least one dose. More than 28% are fully vaccinated. But those rates aren't evenly spread. This map of Sydney shows the postcodes with the highest proportion of people vaccinated in dark green. You can see that in the south and southwest, vaccination rates are lower. Fewer than a fifth of people in Punchbowl and Lakemba are fully vaccinated. That doesn't tell the whole story though. The average age in that part of the city is much lower, and young people have only had easy access to vaccines in recent weeks. Those areas are seeing the biggest increases in vaccination, and they also have by far some of the biggest testing rates. More than half of the residents in Canterbury Bankstown have been tested in the past 2 weeks. Across New South Wales, case numbers keep climbing, but deaths remain low.
What the data is telling us in the last few days is that we haven't seen the worst of it.
In Victoria, there were 24 cases. Most of them, 18, were quarantining while infectious. There were 22 cases in the ACT, with outbreaks in several schools causing concern.
We are actually now seeing more young people in our case numbers, with new cases now identified in a number of additional schools.
There were no new cases anywhere else in Australia, including the Northern Territory, where the lockdown's on track to be lifted at midday tomorrow.
And ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to today's segment, and it's wonderful to have your company today on the 19th day of August, and we are streaming live to you from Brisbane, and where the temperature today is a little bit cool, 15 degrees and sunny. Looking outside the window, as this the scene you can see behind me, Brisbane is just wonderful today. A bit of cloud there, and it is an excellent day. But we've got lots to get through, so in this segment, we have our daily news, plus we have the PIO TV, which thank you everyone for your feedback that's been coming in. Today will be the third day since it's launched, and the launch one, in actually quite a few people viewed that segment, and it is coming live from Delhi, and our team there, the PIO TV team, Munish Gupta, Ken Gupta ji, Ankita, and everyone from there compile it for us on a daily basis. So let's see if you embrace it, if you like it, we will keep that going. But I think that's quite good to get some more additional information from there, because all the normal daily news here, we always get that anyway. So right now, let's move on into our local segment before we go into that segment. So how is the COVID lockdowns affecting a lot of people?
Across Sydney's COVID hotspots, business is either booming, going bust, or on the brink.
Western Sydney is like the engine room of Sydney.
It's been rolling with the punches and doing the best to keep our head above water.
On the ground in Western Sydney, work routines are again upside down. But for essential worker Ray Lee, there's a new sense of responsibility to keep the community safe. He deep cleans COVID exposure sites around New South Wales.
I am an authorised worker. I'm actually allowed to drive across to regional areas, Wollongong and Orange, and sometimes Newcastle as well. If you don't follow the rule properly, you can easily become a super spreader.
Like the thousands of other workers who live in the hotspots, Ray is required to be tested every 3 days.
It was a little bit difficult to get used to at the very beginning, but after a couple of months, really now, living in the Cumberland area, it became a really helpful thing, right? Because you know that you are safe and you are being safe to the community, and your co-worker that's working with you are safe as well.
The company Ray works for has tripled its workforce during the pandemic, from 200 to 600. absorbing job losses from aviation, hospitality and the arts.
A lot of people got laid off, a lot of business are stopped. As a company, we are actually providing opportunity to all different type of people to be able to get them employed and get them back to the jobs, to basically put food on the table.
Now with further lockdowns, we're seeing a lot of people coming back to us, particularly in those industries hardest hit, which would be the hospitality industry. There's been a greater appreciation and an awareness that cleaners are at the front lines and they're in the fight against the virus.
Western Sydney is Australia's third largest economy and a crucial distribution network for the rest of the nation.
But to have Melbourne and Sydney in synchronised lockdowns is a disaster economically for the country. Let's have some compassion for the people of Western Sydney. Okay, let's not deride them. Let's not blame them. Let's have compassion for the people of Western Sydney because they are vital for us as a society.
One key business is fashion group Q, which owns several different brands and 180 retail stores in Australia and New Zealand. The heart of its operations is based in Western Sydney.
Even though we don't own the manufacturing base, we are Australia's largest manufacturer of clothing, and having those areas shut down has severely crippled our business.
About a third of Q's 1,000 workers have been stood down temporarily. Another 150 were let go last year.
We really are at approximately 5% of capacity, maybe. And unfortunately, because of the severe lockdowns, I've actually begrudgingly had to shift some of the work to our offshore manufacturing.
And while online sales have grown, it hasn't been enough to offset losses.
When you look at our total turnover, we're sort of towards like 40-odd% down.
Sydney, which is the heart of a lot of industries, in that lockdown, is not doing very well. So there will be, as I mentioned before, that it's not just now. As we move along, there will be a lot more reports that will probably hit the surface, and we will find out about a lot more businesses that are doing really, really tough. At the moment, they're still in that little bit of that buffer zone where slowly things are being absorbed. But looking at the outlook, looking further beyond, this will all have an effect further down the track as well. It might not be visible right now, but repercussions will be happening. Well, right now, let's take a look at this report with the opposition leader, Chris Munns.
It was a record day yesterday, but the headlines today are suggesting New South Wales could be facing more than 1,000, perhaps 2,000 cases a day in a matter of weeks. Do you think that is a prospect?
Well, it's unclear at this point. Obviously, we're all eyes are on the 11 o'clock press conference. That will be where the figures will be released by the New South Wales government. Many people in this state are on tenterhooks at the moment because the stakes are so high. People are going through a very, very difficult period. We hope those numbers drop, and frankly, we have to do everything we can to reduce the reproduction rate in our community so that we can get back to some kind of normality.
When you say back to some kind of normality, do you think that it can be contained? Do you think that zero COVID is just a dream now?
I think there's three ways that this could go. It could stay the same. We could have about 600 a day. It could rapidly increase or it could drop. Now, there's some indications from Singapore where they had about 150 cases a day. In July, they're down now around 50 cases. So there has been some success in other jurisdictions. I realise you can't replicate circumstances into New South Wales, but frankly, we must do everything on the table to reduce this reproduction rate, because the implications of letting it run to the 1,000 or 2,000s would overwhelm our ICU units, our emergency departments, our hospitals, our healthcare, particularly in the regions, they just can't cope.
Yeah, you were advocating.
So the systems there and the infrastructure is not in place to cope up with the numbers if it reaches around 1,000. So the reproduction rate of the virus needs to be controlled and contained. And at this point in time, they're having a what you would call is a losing battle. Like we're not gaining any grounds there. Let's be very clear about that. Now, of course, all of this does have a great implication on many things, financials and other things. But what about mental health of people?
It's been a pretty tough time for a lot of people around the country at the moment, and we need to give you a warning that this next segment will discuss mental health and suicide. Support services are continuing to see a spike in demand as lockdowns in several states get extended. We're joined now by the Executive Director at the youth mental health organisation Origin, Professor Patrick McGorry. Patrick, thank you, and thanks for coming on News Breakfast.
Good morning, Lisa.
What kind of conversations are being had behind the scenes? I know that you've been discussing this issue with the leadership, the government leadership, especially here in Victoria. What are people saying?
Well, I think the government in Victoria, we're lucky that they're very committed to mental health reform. The Royal Commission showed that, but sadly the Royal Commission also showed that the system was already broken. And over the last 18 months or so, with this surge in demand that we've seen, a steady surge, it's not a spike, it's a surge. We modelled this for the government last year. We said there was going to be a 30% increase in need for care, and that's what we're actually seeing now, especially in young people, teenagers and young adults, obviously the area that I work in. And the problem is the system has been waiting for the cavalry to come over the hill with the Royal Commission, but the cavalry's been delayed, and so there's a great urgency to actually solve the problems in execution of mental health reform and growth in mental health care, right at the time when the system is under the most extreme pressure I've ever seen. So the government are absolutely on top of this. They understand that's the problem. They understand it's the shadow pandemic. It's the major health issue that Victorians are grappling with at the moment, apart from concern about the virus. So I've had a very good response from the Deputy Premier, and I believe that this issue will be tackled much more seriously in the coming days and weeks.
And it is something that really needs to be tackled and really needs to be addressed. So if you are out in the community and if you ever facing any kind of depression, mental issues, whatever, you must be reassured that there is help. Reach out. Please do reach out, and there are many avenues available to you. We are lucky to be in a country where there is so much help and support available. But the thing is, many times people don't speak out and they suffer in private and in vain, and people don't know things about it. So, for mental health issues and domestic violence or anything like that, please do reach out. We are in a country where we can do so, and we can do so without any fear at all. Well, right now, the leading story before we go to our PIO TV segment for today is we cannot go past what's happening in Afghanistan. And let's take a look at what Australian government is doing.
Rescue from Kabul. A midnight mission managed in darkness. A handful of Australians on their way home, and Afghan families with a future more certain.
And we will bring out as many as we can, as safely and as quickly as we can.
The Australian Air Force Hercules C-130 left a Dubai airbase about 11 p.m. Canberra time. Steering well clear of Iranian airspace, it then flew north over Pakistan, dropping off radar, continuing on to Kabul. Once on the tarmac, 26 people were taken on board. The lucky few had been able to navigate Taliban checkpoints and queues of traffic into the airport.
Outside the airport, at one point people were having to be lifted over gates.
The plane reappeared on the radar over Kandahar, landing in Dubai mid-morning Canberra time.
This was the first of what will be many flights.
A giant Globemaster aircraft will be flown in next. The government hopeful it can match Allies' evacuation efforts.
It's very difficult for any Australian to imagine the sense of chaos and uncertainty that is existing right across this country.
Once in Dubai, evacuees are given health, ID and biometric screening before being quickly flown to Australia. The return of the Taliban is already sparking fears of a humanitarian crisis. Australia's promising to accept more than 3,000 Afghan refugees this financial year, but not if they come by boat, as many thousands did a decade ago.
I want to send a very clear message to people smugglers in the region that nothing's changed. I will not give you a product to sell and take advantage of people's misery.
A heartless announcement from the Prime Minister and goes nowhere near enough for what Australia should be doing.
Once the evacuation mission is over, Australia and its allies will have to decide whether to recognise the Taliban as Afghanistan's government. No one believes the Islamist group has really changed its character or reformed its views on women and human rights more broadly. But if the Taliban once again allows Afghanistan to be a base for global terrorism, we might be back there soon enough. Andrew Probyn.
Whether or not the Western world recognizes Taliban as the rulers there, we saw in a press conference that they've changed the ways, they've changed their rules, and that they are there, and that they would be the rightful rulers of the land, and bringing in the law, the holy law, and following that. So, whether they gain recognition, what their treatment would be of women and children is something that remains to be seen. But we have seen that in our worldwide there is a movement that's sort of supporting them to say that yes, they are doing what's right for their country and for their religion. Well, that's yet to be seen. Well, right now it's time to go to today's segment of our PIO TV, coming all the way from Delhi.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on 17th August and discussed the Afghan situation with him. External Affairs Minister of India Dr. S. Jaishankar on 17th August met UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and discussed the situation in war-torn Afghanistan. Later, Jaishankar tweeted, quote, "Good to meet UN Secretary General at Antonio Guterres. Our discussions focused on Afghanistan following upon the Security Council meeting yesterday." End quote. Jaishankar arrived in New York on 16th August as the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting on the situation in Afghanistan. It is the second time in just over 10 days that the powerful UN body met under India's presidency for the month of August to discuss the rapidly deteriorating and unraveling situation in Afghanistan, where the Taliban has taken over the country. Jaishankar also had a discussion with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and underlined the urgency of restoring airport operations in Kabul. Jaishankar will chair two high-level signature events this week under India's current Security Council presidency. Jaishankar will chair an open debate on August 18th on technology and peacekeeping under the overarching theme of protecting the protectors. He will also chair a high-level event on August 19th on counter-terrorism, during which the Council will discuss the Secretary General's 6-monthly report on the threat posed by ISIL or Daesh, under the agenda item, Threats to International Peace and Security Caused by Terrorist Acts. India's permanent representative to the UN Ambassador T.S. Tirumurthy said in a tweet that Jaishankar will participate in a ceremony at the UN Peacekeeping Memorial in the UN headquarters along with Guterres. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired an urgent meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security on recent developments in Afghanistan. The deteriorating political situation in neighbouring Afghanistan was discussed in an urgent meeting of the Indian Cabinet Committee on Security chaired by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on 17th August held at his residence. India is alarmed at the swift takeover of the country by the Taliban 2 days ago, with the US set to withdraw all troops by 31st August. The meeting was being attended by senior ministers and officials including Home Minister Amit Shah, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla. Indian Ambassador to Afghanistan Rudrendra Tandon, who came back from Kabul earlier in the day as part of India's emergency evacuation from the war-torn nation, briefed the CCS. The CCS was briefed in detail about the current and evolving security and political situation in Afghanistan. The CCS was also informed about the recent evacuations of Indian embassy officials and some members of the Indian community, as well as some members of Indian media. Prime Minister Modi has been constantly monitoring the situation, including the when on 16th August night an Indian Air Force plane evacuated staff of the Indian embassy and some citizens. Flight has landed safely in Hindon near Delhi after a brief halt in Jamnagar, Gujarat on 17th August morning. It was the second evacuation flight as another C-17 aircraft earlier brought back around 40 people from the Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul on 16th of August. On August 17th, India registered the least number of COVID-19 cases during the last 5 months and created a new record of highest number of COVID vaccination in a single day. India on 17th August 2021 registered 25,166 new COVID-19 cases, lowest in the last 154 days, taking the tally to 32,250,679. India's recovery rate stood at 97.51%, the highest since March. And to top that, India created a new single-day vaccination record with 8.81 million doses given in the last 24 hours. The Indian Health Ministry announced that active cases had declined to 369,846, the lowest in 146 days. This is just 1.15% of the total infections, lowest since March 2020. The daily positivity rate was recorded at 1.61%. Cumulatively, 554.7 million COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered under the nationwide vaccination drive so far. Seeing the improving COVID conditions in India, the UK has eased travel rules for India. Following the US announcement easing restrictions for Indian travellers, the UK government on 17th August also updated the official travel advisory for India, removing major restrictions under the COVID-19 based traffic light system. India had moved from the UK's red list travel ban to amber on 8th August. The Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office advisory now says that, quote, following the peak of India's second COVID-19 wave in May, pressure on the Indian healthcare system has lifted as the number of COVID-19 cases has fallen, end quote. A limited number of flights between India and the UK continue to operate. Travellers are advised to check airline websites prior to booking tickets and see important guidance prior to travel. Travellers are asked to check the entry requirement section for India's current entry restrictions and requirements, as these may change with little warning. They should monitor this advice for the latest updates and stay in contact with your travel provider. Under the Amber List rules, fully vaccinated British nationals returning from India no longer need to quarantine but must arrange a pre-departure test while still in the country, as well as a day 2 test after returning to UK. To qualify as fully vaccinated, only UK and the US approved vaccines are recognized and require passengers to have had their second vaccine injection 2 full weeks before the travel date. Other nationals, vaccinated abroad or unvaccinated, are required to self-isolate at their declared address on the compulsory passenger locator form. They are also required to get a pre-departure PCR test and another test on day 2 and day 8 of their entry to the UK. A cricket clash awaited for years will become a reality during the first match India plays against Pakistan at the T20 World Cup in UAE. Every Indian cricket fan's dream match, the clash of arch rivals India and Pakistan, will be played on October 24th. The International Cricket Council announced on 17th August 2021 that India will play Pakistan in their ICC T20 World Cup opener in Dubai. According to the schedule, India's second opponent will be New Zealand on October 31st in Dubai. A match against Afghanistan in Abu Dhabi on November 3rd is up in the air now considering the situation in Afghanistan. India's remaining two Super 12 matches are against the winner of Group B on November 5th in Dubai and the second place side of Group A on November 8th in Dubai. The tournament's first round kicks off on October 17th in Oman, with the host taking on Papua New Guinea and Bangladesh playing Scotland. The tournament is being hosted by India in the United Arab Emirates, and Oman, as a third wave of the COVID-19 is being anticipated at that time of the tournament. Karthik Subbaraj's upcoming horror thriller Bhumika, starring star Aishwarya Rajesh, is ready to give the audience a spine-chilling experience. Here is a look at the second trailer of the film. Tamil film Bhumika has the second trailer out. Starring Aishwarya Rajesh, the movie will be streaming on the OTT platform Netflix from August 23rd. The trailer opens with a character explaining how the earth is constantly communicating with humans. It's making itself very clear. Guess what it's saying? I know how to say it myself. If you can, save yourself from me, says a character whose identity is not revealed in the trailer, indicating that the film is likely to discuss ecological destruction. Spine-chilling glimpses coupled with ominous music sets the tone for a horror flick. Shot in picturesque landscapes, the trailer features a perplexed-looking Aishwarya Rajesh. Trailer shows a series of bizarre accidents and frightening incidents. The description caption reads, "Strange things and scary incidents unfold when Gayatri and Gautam try to convert a dilapidated school into a resort. Will they be able to survive these horrific circumstances?" The cast of Bhumika includes actors Vidhu, Pavel Navgeethan, Madhuri, Surya Ganpati, Ayan Abhishek, Avantika Vandanapu. In breaking news today, after a wait of more than 7 years, Congress leader and former Minister Dr. Shashi Tharoor feels relieved as a Delhi court on 18th August discharged him of all charges in connection with the death of his wife Sunanda Pushkar. She was found dead in a suite of a luxury hotel in the city on the night of 17th January 2014. Tharoor was the main accused in the case according to the Delhi police. Special Judge Gitanjali Goyal passed the order in a virtual hearing. Tharoor thanked the judge and said it was an absolute torture for last 7.5 years and that it was a great relief. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been our daily India report coming all the way from Delhi. That's our collaboration with PIO TV. That was our third segment. And as I said before, I'd like to get your feedback on what do you think of the segment and should we continue the segment. And I think it is quite good. That's my personal opinion, but I'd like to hear from you all. Well, right now, it's time to say goodbye from this segment. We'll be back with the travel updates with Tanvi Goyal at 10 a.m. We'll see you then. Until then, it's goodbye from us.